One thing I want to mention real quickly that I don't think I brought up before is when you're taking the knife apart, putting it together over and over again. The way that I do that, and maybe I did touch briefly on this, but I stick it in the vise and kind of push everything together. I'll have both ends pinned, and then the back spring you can actually see is stuck out just a little bit. And you're wanting to try to line these holes up now, so you want to push your spring in. There is a jig you can make to do this on the drill press or a mill using the quill. The way I do it is normally just stick it in the vise, use the vise to push everything in line. It's definitely not the best way to do it, and actually I should put something over the jaws to protect the knife a little better. But you also want to taper your pins for your center hole as well, just in case your holes aren't lined up completely just right. That'll help get it the rest of the way. You do want to be careful, however, because of how soft the pin material is compared to the back spring. You can tend to scrape some metal off your pins and get that scraped metal caught in between everything, and your knife won't go together all the way. So do keep that in mind. Make sure everything's tight. Try to line up the holes as well as you can, and stick your pins in. And then you can grind the excess off and peen them. So I'm going to get the pins in, and then we'll go to the next step. I'll show the peening process. Alright, we're ready to start the process of peening everything together. And once again, this is kind of one of those point of no return steps in the process. So we want to do a couple of things. We want to make sure everything's nice and tight, that there's nothing in between our handles and scales. You could even hold it up to your shop light and kind of make sure there's nothing poking through there. And then we're going to go ahead and stick some shim stock in the end so that when we peen the pivot, we're not peening it too tight where it won't open and close on us. And we can always take the shim stock out and then tighten it up a little bit if needed. But it's really hard to loosen everything back up if you over peen the pivot. And I have to go backwards. So what we've done, we've gone ahead and ground down our pins to roughly 1/16 or so left over, or just under the diameter of the pin. And we're going to start peening. And what I like to use, since I don't have a cutler steady or really an anvil or anything, I use the head of a hardened bolt, or a grade, I don't know if this is grade 5, grade 8, what it is. But it's pretty hard. It hasn't really shown any wear in the dozens and dozens of pins I've peened with it. And then we're going to go ahead and get a lightweight hammer. See if I can get a little closer here. And start the process. And what I like to do is kind of start around the edges, work my way in a circle. Just real light taps, and you can see the head of the pen starting to swell as you start making some progress. Again, we want to make sure everything's nice and tight. So we'll start on one side, swell the pen a little. And really when I do it, I like to focus more on the edges than the center, although I'll hit the center every now and again just to flatten everything back out. And eventually you'll get kind of a dome on the top and start to see it mushroom out. Now these pins are going to be ground flush, so we're not worried about leaving a decorative domed finish. But you can definitely see how that pin's tapering out now and filling the space that we tapered with our pin reamers earlier. So once I get to this point on the one side, I'll go ahead and drive the pin tight in the hole. And then we can start on the other side, start sucking everything together. And now that I know the pin or the pivot won't fall out, we'll go ahead and do our back spring pins. You don't want to get too carried away. You want the hammer to do the work for you, just the weight of the hammer. Should be more than enough to shape this. It's either a 3/16 stainless or even a 4, maybe a 4/16. So it's pretty soft to begin with. And honestly, I probably left these pins a little longer than I needed to, but we are grinding them flush, so they are still filling the voids. And should look just fine when we grind them off. I'm going to try to peen evenly around the edges. Try not to get a lopsided pin or angle your pin. And that one's good. Alright, now I know that's not going anywhere. We can go ahead and take our shims out. Should be somewhat tight, but not very. And if I didn't mention it, this isn't actually shim stock, it's just the inside of a beer can. It works just as well if you don't have any readily available to you. Kind of the poor man's shim stock, I guess. But you can see we got a pretty good amount of play in there still, but now we can kind of tighten it up and sneak up on it. And it really doesn't take a lot. It's actually pretty good already. We can maybe tighten it up just a little more. Pretty much taking all the play out of the blade. See how well things centered up. Not looking too bad right now, but I think we want to tighten it up just a little more. All right, we'll adjust it a little bit more. Looks like we are favoring one side just a little bit. I'll see if I can rack that over just a touch. Some of that may be our grind angle as well. So I'm going to play with that a little bit, but we're not touching the sides, and we're opening pretty smoothly right now. Got some good spring for the close. Good snap opening. So we're actually in pretty good shape. So I'm going to work this in a little bit more. See if I can adjust that blade center just a scotch. And then we'll be ready to grind our pins flush, start shaping the handle.